right? And so what you say is look over the whole test first to just get a sense of what is the overall arc of the test. Then you say figure out how much time you have to spend on each section. So let's say that you actually, and I had a question about that because I'm trying to figure out logistically how that would work. But let's take something like the ACT, which is something that someone knows about. So you actually are taking a math test. It's maybe 40 minutes per section. You look that there's, I don't know, 10, I'm hypothetical. Let's say there are
Sure.
10 questions, right? You have 10 questions, 40 minutes to do it. And so you would take 40 minutes minus 10 minutes because you want a buffer so that you can time to review. So you'd have 30 minutes to spend on those 10 questions. So you'd have 3 minutes per question,
Yeah.
right? So that's how you do. You'd actually, but you want to look over the test first so you can figure out how to answer all the easy stuff first. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So think about it. There's two levels of granularity. So if the test has multiple sort of discrete sections, so for example, if it's an art history test, you're typically going to have a beginning portion, which is all just names and dates, a memorization section.
Right.
Who did this artwork, who did this dates, and then you're going to have four essay questions. So there'd be two parts to that test. If it's a math test, you're going to have potentially like some multiple choice questions up front, true or false type questions. Then you might have a bunch of essay questions. So first of all, you just make a time budget and say for each of the major sections of the test, how much time should I be spending on it? And you actually write the times on there when you should be starting and ending. So you just have this pragmatic frame so that as you're working on problems within a section, you sort of know, am I on track or am I way off track?
Okay.
Now, within a section, my advice is you really read through all the questions and make sure that you attack first the ones you absolutely know how to solve. And that's because you want to make sure that you get every point that you know how to get. So
Mm-hmm.
you solve those first when you have time, you solve them well, you solve them, get all the points you can get, and then you turn to the ones that are harder so that you can try to get as many points as possible for those problems in the time that remains. So
Okay,
what I'm
got it.
trying to avoid by the ordering is, let's say you have four big problems on a math test, and the second problem you don't really know how to solve. If you get stuck, you go sequentially. You get stuck on that second problem. Your instinct is, I can't leave this blank. Oh no, I got to figure this out, or I'm going to fail this whole test. What if I
Right.
don't? You panic, and all of your time gets eaten up, and then you scramble at the end to put down answers for the last two. But you may know how to solve those last two, and you're basically giving up points because you don't give yourself enough time. So if you instead
Ah.
go to the questions you know and do them carefully, you're maximizing every point you know how to get.
Ah, okay,
And
got it.
then when you're on the hard problems that are at the end, you're not panicking. Like,
Right.
all right, these are the only ones I'm not quite sure about. I can now spend the rest of my time sort of calmly thinking about them. You have less pressure. Maybe you're going to have an insight, and even if you don't, you can just be very careful and get as many points as you
Got
can
it.
what you know.
Okay, and I want to go back to the thing that you said. So let's say you had three sections. One's a true and false, one's multiple choice, and one's an essay. And you had, 40 or 30 minutes to do it. Would you just arbitrarily say, okay, I have 10 minutes per section, even though you know the true and false is going to be way less than 10 minutes per
Yeah,
section?
you make a reasonable split. So you make an estimate of how much time should I spend for each.
Okay.
Depending, so true and false, you're not going to treat one true and false question the same you would one open-ended math problem where they give you the whole page to work it out. So you use your judgment there. The key, however, is that you have this time budget when you're working on any section. So you're not just going along the test, and in a 2 hour test, you don't wait till you're an hour and a half in and say, where am I?
See, if I were to doing it, I would think like, oh, well, maybe I should spend 10 minutes on this and 15 minutes. Like, it would probably take me 10 minutes to figure out how to proportion out that 30 minutes.
It's true, but I make the point that the 5 minutes you spend to do this type of pre-planning actually really pays back huge dividends in
It
terms of
does?
points.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's like a 20-minute exam or something,
And then
but
you've blown 5 minutes just.
that's significant. But if it's an hour and a half, 2 hours long, strategize, slow
Yeah,
down,
yeah, yeah. Okay.
you're going to get more points.
And then using any leftover time to check and recheck your work. So, I talked to a tutor, my son has an AC tutor, and he was saying, don't spend any time to recheck the stuff. Just do it right the first time. What do you think?
Yeah, so the issue is you don't want to get stuck in perfectionist mode on a problem when there's problems
Mm,
left to do. So you want to be confident. I know how to do this. Let me go slow. I don't want to make mistakes, but I'll go slow but confidently and get out my answer. I think this is right. I think this is right. Okay, that looks good, and then move on. And then if you have some time left, which you probably will if you're using time budgets and you're taking your test smart, you're not going to run up to the last minute. Then you can go back and say, let me take the ones I was least confident on and go
ah,
back and look at them carefully and look for stupid mistakes.
yeah, I love it. Okay, now what we didn't cover is essays and papers, and you have much like you've done for, math, and you talk about how to write papers, two different types of paper, either a a research paper or what's the other one?
Essay.
Essay. All right, and it's in the whole. I mean, there's like I don't know, like 40 pages of that, and we also didn't cover. You had said in the very beginning, you said, you know what, this is a book that's 10 years old, and people have written back to me saying, hey, you basically didn't talk about student burnout and stress, which is critical, and you didn't talk about multiple choice types of questions, both of which you have in your blog. So tell us how to get them. Tell us your blog, and then I'll actually post those link to those articles too.
Yeah, so my blog is calnewport.com. You can get to it there. And the blog was called Study Hacks. And I started it right after this book came out. And the idea was I could talk about the material that didn't quite make it into the book. But it actually was an education for me because that blog led me to have interactions with dozens of students a week. And I really could identify the issues the book didn't tackle or techniques that the book didn't tackle. And so on that blog, you can actually find a lot of what you could think of as the missing chapters for this.
Love it. This was just so fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. You probably, my sons thank you too. They don't realize it yet, but you probably have saved them a ton of time. Cool.
Tell them I'm saying read the book, and they're going to have a lot more time for toga parties.
Exactly. That is my whole mentality when I was in college. So Cal Newport, how to become a straight A student. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you, CJ.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.